You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And, oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Meatloaf Monday because, you know, it's always about the food, it seems. Meatloaf Monday. Hit it, man.
I think I'll try the meatloaf sandwich.
Do you know what that is?
Yes, meatloaf.
What is it? I'm only asking in case I have to describe it later to a doctor.
Look, it's nutritious. It's delicious.
Made out of meat. Add ketchup if you want. I couldn't care less.
Meatloaf Monday. Welcome to it. We're glad you're with us. We got plenty on tap for you today. And by the way, that is JP pushing buttons so ably on the board. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm
Come on.
recovering.
Come on. War Eagle.
Recovering. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, my gosh. What a basketball weekend, huh?
Yeah, chalky basketball weekend.
Chalky.
Chalky.
Why do you call it chalky?
That's the phrase for, like, you know, people pick their brackets and they always just pick the higher seed to win. They call it chalk. So we have 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. So it's chalk madness. Chalk madness.
But you know what that means, don't you?
Well, I guess they did pick.
They picked the best
teams.
teams to be the number 1 seeds.
Also, the gap between the top and everybody else in college basketball is just too good this year. So we'll see. I mean, Auburn's got to beat a team that already beat them at home, so it's going to be their toughest game they played yet, March Madness.
So I'll describe the hierarchy of basketball for you. I'm not even a sports guy like you are.
Yeah.
It's the 4 number 1 seeds.
Yeah.
Then it's the SEC, and then it's everybody else.
Yep. That is pretty much it. Yeah. So I think 8 of the top 9 were in the Elite 8. So it was a trend all year.
Wow.
All the good teams just kept winning.
All right. We'll talk about it more, I'm sure. There'll be some banter along the way, but either way, as an Auburn fan, I'm both excited and on pins and needles. All right. We got plenty of show. I mean, I'm talking about plenty of show for you today. Coming up at the top of the second hour, Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray. Wyoming. Phil, what are you doing with a guy from Wyoming? I'm talking to him. So Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray is calling in. Why? Because Wyoming is the state that has already instituted a law requiring proof of citizenship to be able to vote in their state. You may recall that President Trump passed an executive order last week that sounds a lot like that. Well, he may have gotten his inspiration from Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray. So we'll talk about that. By the way, you might be interested to find out he's also part of the reason why Liz Cheney is no longer in office. Awesome. So yeah, that's coming up top of the second hour. And then I got a triple dipper filled with stuff. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. So, election consequences. Y'all, we have some big stuff happening. There are some elections going on like right now, and we'll talk about those in detail. But then we've also got the situation I told you about with the citizenship issue, and is Wyoming's law going to stand up to muster? We'll talk to the guy who helped put it in place. That's Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray. Election consequences, number 1 on the Triple Dipper. All right, number 2. The state of Greenland. Is Greenland going to be the 51st state? I thought it was Canada. Nope, it may be Greenland. Are they really? We'll talk about the ins and the outs and the whys and the wherefores. Why do we care about Greenland? A lot of reasons, actually. I'll tell you about the state of Greenland here at number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, culture wars. And by that, what I mean is, it's the woke against the non-woke. It's the liberal against the conservative. It's all the things that we've been fighting against that we won the election with. Oh boy, we're going to talk about some things that are happening even right now, some of which are right here in Alabama. The culture wars. Y'all stand by for that one, number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump into the Rightside Way opening monologue. And I'll remind you guys that attorney Stan McDonald is indeed the sponsor daily of the Rightside Way. Stan McDonald, a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, a 30-year veteran in the practice of law in North Alabama. And oh, by the way, sponsor daily of the Rightside Way. And I'll tell you more about Stan McDonald here in just a minute. Okay, let me ask you something. Do you remember maps? Maps. Do any of you remember maps? And no, I'm not talking about Google Maps. I'm not talking about hitting the button on an app on your smartphone and getting immediate gratification from knowing where you are at all times. I'm talking about a good old-fashioned paper map, the kind with creases and labels and tears and frustration. In the old days, distracted driving, it was not because you were texting behind the wheel. Distracted driving back in the day was because of the effort you had to make to unfold the map and figure out where you were while not absolutely losing your mind while you were driving. But I'll be honest with you, I love maps. In the military, I was trained with old school maps, protractors, compasses, and a stubby pencil to be able to find my way from point A to point B. Had to use things like terrain association, dead reckoning, pace counts, hitting my azimuth, and having that deep satisfaction of walking up to a spot knowing you were where you were, and you did it just with a map. And by the way, maps are not easy. Maps require a brain. Maps require effort. They require knowing where you are at any given time, because once you lose sight of the landmarks on the ground, you're going to have to then reorient the map, look around you, find something that matches, and then regain your understanding of your current position and how it relates to where you're going. It also involves some degree of trust, I'll be honest, it does. You have to look at the map, you got to decide if what you're seeing on the ground matches what's on the paper and how it relates to where you're going. So I used to belong to AAA also. Remember that? AAA. They had a cool feature you could get back in the day called triptychs. Triptychs. I liked it. You told AAA where you were going, and they would build you a set of these map cards that would flip open in sequence so you wouldn't have to fight the giant paper map when you were in the car. But one thing a map could never do, though, was account for when there were changes in the road, like detours or traffic or construction zones. Those were all the unknowns. But then came the era of GPS, and everything changed. Look, I thought GPS was frivolous when it first came out. I eschewed the silliness of trusting a machine to tell me where I was at any given time. But then I went to the Pentagon back in 2009, realized going up there I was going to be driving around basically unfamiliar territory. The big city madness. So I got into my first foray of GPS navigation, and I bought myself a TomTom. Remember those things? TomToms. Anybody remember that? You had to download the updates constantly off of CD-ROMs. But you could select your voice too. It would talk to you in whatever voice you wanted to select. So Charlene used to kid me. I had the lovely voice of a young British girl named Mandy, who would speak to me in soothing tones as I traversed the giant metropolis of Washington, D.C. Excuse me, please turn right ahead. Thank you, Mandy. That's very kind. I heard you could download other voices. I heard that one of the choices was Mr. T. Turn right, fool! But I had a feeling that one would incite me to violence, so I never went there. But even Mandy would get yelled at when she didn't know there was construction. And in D.C., there was always road construction. Excuse me, please turn right ahead. Well, I can't really do that, can I, Mandy? Please stand by while I reroute you. Yes, Mandy, why don't you just do that and hurry up? Anyone driving by would see me waving my hands in the air like an orchestra conductor as I shouted at Mandy. But it was still better than the old school maps, really. And now you can just drop a pin. Just post the speed traps for all your fellow travelers. You can see the roads and the construction zones before you even get there. Now you can make a plan in advance. And yes, I always prefer a plan. Maybe that's why I like maps. Because maps are a version of a plan. They tell you where you're going. I can take the road less traveled as well as anyone and see what's down there. I love backcountry hiking and exploring, but when it comes to most days, I tend to like to know where I'm going. And I'm a planner by nature. I'm a list maker. Sometimes when life seems to be getting the upper hand, it actually makes me feel better to sit down and create like an updated to-do list. It's kind of like my map for the day. When I'm really grooving, I'll even make the list and then I'll rank order the various tasks and set my priorities as to which ones I'm going to do first. I have started or helped start multiple businesses, and I've learned early on to do things like a SWOT analysis. So I examine the business case in light of its strengths and weaknesses and obstacles and threats. When I go to court as an attorney, I try to have a litigation plan as my roadmap for the case, with the desired end state in mind for my client that comes from having researched the law, knowing our position before I even get to the judge. I mean, part of that's just me, I guess. I've taken tests to determine what my gifts and talents are, and mine have always been leadership and administration. Basically, I like to plan. I was trained in the Army to conduct detailed planning. Every operation, every mission, every training event. Before I took my team down range, I had to do a brief back to higher ups to lay out the plan, the map, if you will, for everything from daily operations to escape and evasion, all of it. Now, granted, here's the thing. Not every plan survives first contact with the enemy. That's the truth. But if you don't plan at all, well, you know what happens. The old adage is that a failure to plan is a plan to fail. There's always another old saying, too, from an unknown source that I've heard many times, that when making a plan, remember, the enemy always gets a vote. The first saying means clearly that if we don't think things through and arrive on the scene with a well-thought-out plan, with a roadmap, if you will, for where we're going, with contingencies and logistics and timelines, that we're just dooming ourselves to an increased likelihood of failure. But the other means that as surely as we are making our plans, the enemy is also making theirs. In other words, when the bullets start flying, the enemy has a say in the final outcome. We better remember that. That's why we better have our map, our plan. Maybe that's why I'm enjoying watching the Trump administration work. Because if you get down to it, they told us in advance what the end state was going to be. And we can actually see the plan because they announced the plan and they're actually working the plan. I mean, call it the Trump agenda, the Trump doctrine, MAGA, whatever. The fact is, there appears to be a plan and they are working the plan. Look, we just spent 4 years watching the Biden administration just put their finger in the air and decide which way the wind was blowing on any given day and doing what they wanted to do. I mean, sure, there were some agenda items here and there, but there was no cohesive effort toward working an actual plan, even a bad plan. In the last 2 years of his administration, Joe Biden rarely even met with the press and just as rarely ever held a cabinet meeting. A cabinet meeting with the people that are supposed to help him make the plan work, and he wasn't even meeting with them as far as we could tell. In the final days of his term, Biden finally held one last cabinet meeting, and he promptly turned it over to his wife, who then ran the meeting while his son Hunter sat in the room for reasons we couldn't figure out and looked on. There was no understanding, there was no list, there was no analysis, there was no plan, there was no roadmap for where they wanted to take the nation. Look, you have to know what you stand for before you can truly take meaningful action. You have to know how to get to where you're going before you even get on the road to get there. Having a plan is like having a map. It guides you to your ultimate destination. And if the leader fails, then anyone else can then pick up the map, the plan, and still move forward because it's all right there in front of you. In the absence of a plan, anything can happen. In the absence of a mission, priorities, and task organization, the unit can flounder on the battlefield. So, yep, I'm a planner by nature. I do try to order my steps. I try to examine the way forward. Then I try to chart the various steps and milestones we need to achieve. And I'm thankful, by the way, to finally have a team back in the White House that actually seems to have a plan and know how to work their plan. Because the American people deserve a plan. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us where we're going. Tell us what's in it for us. Tell us what we'll achieve. Tell us how it impacts us if we do and if we don't. And is there a doctrine? Is there serious analysis? Is there a plan? Are we on a roadmap right now? I would say the answer is finally yes. No traveler should ever be without a map. No leader should ever be without a plan. Yes, plans matter. Plans unify. Plans breed success because they give focus and maintain direction. And again, a failure to plan is a plan to fail, but remember, the enemy does get a vote, yes. And when shots ring out and they soon enough start flying in both directions, the plan gives you the guidance for what to do. And by the way, don't think for a minute the Democrats are going to sit idly by and just let the Republicans have their way. They're not. They're going to do everything they can to impede progress on that roadmap. So how do we nullify their progressive influence? How do we galvanize grassroots support for when times get dicey? How do we keep the team focused? With a plan, with a roadmap. I love a good plan, man. Gives us something to rally around. But the enemy does get a vote, so it better be a good plan, and you better be able to work the plan. But the old adage remains that a failure to plan is indeed a plan to fail. The Trump administration knows the roadmap. They've got it, and we are traveling those roads. Turn right, fool! That's a wrap for the Right Side Way. Can you imagine having Mr. T be your voice on Waze or Google Maps? Turn right, you fool! I pity you. Getting lost. More on that. Lots of things going on. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, so the text messages are flowing in. I'll see what all they are saying here in just a minute. Appreciate that. The text lines are indeed open. All of y'all, text it in, call it in. Same number for both. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Just text it or call it. So Stan McDonald, Stan McDonald is the sponsor daily of the Rightside Way monologue. Attorney Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, a 30-year veteran in the practice of law. Y'all, I'm telling you, I know Stan McDonald personally. I can just tell you for a fact that Stan McDonald has been a warrior in the mix for the conservative policies and politics that the Rightside ruffians care about. Not only as an attorney, but I mean just as a ruffian himself. He can represent you in any number of local, state, or federal courts. He's done thousands of real estate transactions over the years for his clients. I like to say when Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend. And likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So let me tell you how to reach him. You might need an attorney in North Alabama. He's your man. Stan McDonald. Law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man. Here's his phone number. You ready? 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald. Law firm Wilmer and Lee, sponsor of the Rightside Way monologue, 256-479-3020. And do me a favor, tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. Oh, yeah. No representation made. The quality of legal service being performed is great. The quality of legal service for the lawyers. I think I said all the words at the end.
7-4.
Oh, Lord.
You muffled it there.
Yeah. Here, I won't muffle this. War Eagle.
Yeah.
How you doing, JP? Are you okay?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the Tide had to run into Duke and nobody else could knock him off.
Pretty much everybody who ran into Duke had to say, I ran into Duke.
What a horrendous matchup that.
What's Duke's record on the year right now?
I don't know. I think they only had 3 losses in the regular season, if even that. They're pretty good. So I guess I'll just have to settle for an Elite 8. That's rats.
How do you say settle for an Elite 8? I mean, the truth is, that's still pretty freaking cool.
I say sarcastically because Alabama. If you would have told me 10 years ago that Alabama would be settling for an Elite 8, I would take that. So
now I realize there's a Chattanooga audience that we have right now, many of which may be less enthused than anybody because they've never had the opportunity to get to a Final Four, like in the history of ever.
And their 161 years of having a program, they have not made a Final Four.
Wow, you just went there, didn't you?
I had that one ready. I heard all them talking after they beat us.
Just go ahead and burn that one in right there.
I heard what they said after they beat us. I kept receipts.
All right, we got plenty to talk about, and I got to catch some text messages. You guys are some texting machines. How many of y'all would want Mr. T to be the voice on your navigator? I'd like to know. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all don't talk about this show. Whew, goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I mean, from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little town on the plains in the Final Four called Auburn, even stretching across the line to what we now recall Fort Benning, Georgia. And then big old patches in North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in, just for good measure. All right, I got to get some. Are you looking at the text lines, man? They are blowing up.
I am.
Y'all are an amazing audience. Let me get some of this stuff. Let's see what we got here. Harris from Athens says, yes, Mr. T would be great. However, Sam Kinnison's voice would be a riot. Say it. Turn. No, don't do that. That would be awful. I think there'd be people like strung out on the side of the road if that happened. Adam from Athens is checking in about the Final Four. He says about Tennessee. Says, might not have made the Final Four. I guess it's time to watch the reigning national title #1 baseball team. Tennessee fan. Speaking to you there.
I could tell. Yeah.
What gave it away? Yeah. We'll give you baseball. Alice from Huntsville says, concerning maps, I love maps. Still, I use them to plan a trip because I want to know about what is going on all the way, and I want to reference exactly where I'm going. See? JP, have you ever used a paper map in your entire life?
No.
You have not?
I've seen them, and my grandmother, when we went to Yellowstone, I pretty much exclusively used paper maps all the way to Yellowstone.
And you made it.
We made it safe and sound because she actually knows how to read them when me and my brothers do not. So, but I think that's the only time I've ever seen a paper map is in her car, where she still has in her car.
Wow. You know what crazy story? So when the war in Afghanistan kicked off, they were sending us over there. We hardly had any maps because, the U.S. hadn't been on. We didn't have everything it takes. You know what the best map I had was? Was a fold-out map from a National Geographic. Believe it or not.
Wow.
took it out of a National Geographic, and it gave me more detail about the region I was going to than anything else I could get from the Army at that particular point. We picked up speed later, obviously.
Yeah.
But.
If I ever got in a spot where I didn't have my GPS, I'd be toast. I'd be toast.
Don't do it. You got to get the stubby pencil out and the map and draw your routes. And all right, Thomas from Athens says maps, plans, strategies, tactics. April 1st. Important vote in Wisconsin. I'm getting there later. I sure am. Big bucks. Yep. All right. I tell you what, brother, you're talking about my whole dipper there, so I will hold that. It's a great text. He's talking about the Wisconsin thing. And yes, I am paying attention. We're going to talk about it. John from Huntsville says, Phil, spectacular monologue. Also, did you see The Mentalist? Oz Perlman. What? Oh, on CBS. Oh, I see. I'm now tracking. Correctly predicted the Final Four. He predicted Arkansas would upset St. John's. And yesterday he put his reputation on the line by guaranteeing Charles Barkley that Auburn and Houston would win. He was correct. By the way, Phil, I want to go for Auburn because they're my team, but unfortunately I got to go for Duke, and I'm pretty sure JP knows why. Why does JP know why?
Because he picked Duke in our bracket.
Gotcha.
So that's his national champion.
Gotcha.
And by the way, that's not so special of Oz. I also picked Arkansas to beat St. John's. Am I the mentalist?
Are you putting yourself
JP,
at Oz's level now?
I mean, it's not that impressive. I guess I'm a mentalist.
John from Harvest says, Phil, I love maps. I also love maps. He says, I used to regularly keep a large road atlas with the states in addition to various local maps in my car. Yes, I had the whole book, the southern states or something, and then I had to keep it tucked down between the seats because it was so big. He said, I used them. He said, did you see the latest Doge find, by the way? Saw a video of Elon Musk showing Democrats giving millions of illegal immigrants Social Security numbers. Wow. And registered them to vote. Wow. Elon confirmed some did vote and they were qualified for max Social Security benefits and enrolled in Medicaid. Oh my gosh. Holy smokes. That's just layers of awful. Ken from Harvest says, don't forget the old adage, proper planning prevents piss poor performance. Yes, it is. I would say more, but I have to go make a to-do list. David from Bucky's, Phil, yet another great monologue. Thank you, sir. Many of them hit home with me. I don't often get to respond due to work, but thankfully I don't miss them due to the podcast. Maps. He said the original GPS and the road atlas. Remember them? GPS version 2. Once you unfolded the map, it was almost impossible to fold them back up and then get them to fit in the glove compartment. Yes, the glove compartment actually had a use. Yes, glove compartments for more than just like stowing your extra napkins you picked up at McDonald's, right? By the way, how many people have extra napkins in their glove box? Yes, everybody in the studio right now raising their hands. That's what it's for. It's the extra napkin box.
It's that, and then the owner's manual for your car. That's it.
Which has been there since you bought it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only time you referenced it when you weren't sure what your tire pressure should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Allie from Athens says, "Oh, Colonel, the all-time great Tom voice was Yoda. Turn right, you must." See that?
That was good.
Oh, the force is big with this one. Turn right, you must. Mark from Red Bay. Phil, you can give Rich Little a run for the money on voice impersonations. Great job. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And JP doesn't know who Rich Little is.
Nope.
Mike from Florence. I have current or pretty close to current Alabama maps and a road atlas in my roadside emergency kit in my daily driver. There you go. By golly, why would you not? Because you know what? The Chinese take down the GPS network. What are you going to do? That's right. Pete from Decatur said, I had a friend whose dad had a retirement job of driving to gas stations and resupplying the map displays you could find in every gas station with the appropriate maps. I don't know where you can buy a map anymore. You know, it's almost like it's an eBay item now. A couple more, and then we'll go to the topics. Joe from Indiana. Joe from Indiana said, I had Darth Vader on my TomTom. Oh, wow.
Luke, turn right.
I've never even played with a TomTom before. Never even heard of it till just now.
TomTom. It was the original. Yeah, it was a separate device. You had to buy it. It came with all the CD-ROMs. You had to connect it to your computer. You had to download it, and then you had to periodically buy new CDs to download more. It was crazy.
That sounds fun.
Not really. But it was neat, and it was it was like the size of a smartphone, and had a little bracket that hung it on your window. Anyway, yes. Chris from Athens says, I'm terrified about the future. These kids have no clue how to read maps and probably not a clue how to read analog watches. Can you read an analog watch?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I know how to read. Yes. I actually was taught how to read a clock when, in middle or in elementary school, I think it was.
It's important business. Look at this. We just got a text with a picture of his Rand McNally Road Atlas. It's a 2012 edition Road Atlas from Tim from Madison. Tim, that thing looks dog-eared and like it's been used for more than just sitting in your lap, keeping your French fries from making a mess on your pants. First-time texter, Aaron, plug him in, brother. You got him already? Aaron from Madison. First-time texter, Phil, great monologue. My father made sure we all knew how to read maps time we were 10. There you go. I think it should be a rite of passage. Cameron from Decatur. I hit his nerve with the maps, man.
Yeah, obviously so.
Did anybody catch the rest of the meaning about having a plan? Cameron from Decatur says, those kids at the fast food places always give you tons more napkins than you need, and the idea of throwing them out is ridiculous. My armrest is jammed full of them, and I use them every day. Yes. And how many times have you been glad you had one?
Yeah, a lot.
By the way, I always thought it was kind of a thing. And then I was watching Walking Dead one time. And on Walking Dead, one of Negan's people stopped the Walking Dead crew, our favorite people, on the road and said, not only are you going to give me your truck, you're going to give me everything in your truck. I mean, right down to the extra napkins you still got from the old McDonald's that used to run down the street in the glove box. That's what you're going to give me. And I thought, they even wrote it into a script on the show. By the way, you got another text from John from Huntsville saying Phil is the greatest mentalist because he said blue jersey would prevail in March Madness. I did say that.
Yeah, I guess you did say that.
You're looking at it right now.
Well,
is there anybody? I mean, Green's out, so
yeah.
What do we got? Florida, yes.
Well, no, Houston.
Auburn, yes.
Houston's red.
Does Houston have no blue tones? Do they?
Nope. But you have
Duke
a 3.
blue.
You have a 3-1 chance of the national champion blue.
I very well could see my prediction, which, by the way, I cannot take full credit for it.
Yeah, it was a reference to somebody else's.
It was. Somebody else just texted in. Tell us who you are, and where you're from. Says updating the TomTom on dial-up took forever. Yes, it did. You got to go through the whole dial-up thing. Remember those noises? Nobody remembers those noises.
I don't.
Okay. Luann from Huntsville, Phil, you can still buy maps at Buc-ee's, but of course they do. Said I actually picked up a Buc-ee lip balm, best ever. Okay. That's random, but thank you. And then last one I'll do. Jeff from Athens says, my youngest son was homeschooled till he received a full scholarship to Mississippi State Electrical Engineering. One of his homeschooled assignments was to draw a map of the world by hand, and he did. Outstanding. Did he have the highways and byways on it? That's what I want to know.
Highways and byways?
By the way, JP, do you know right out here in the green room area at the Rightside studio on the wall, the big cutout of Alabama?
Mm-hmm.
You know, all those lines in there are the actual roads and highways of the state.
So I figured it looked like it, but yeah, it makes sense.
So later, your assignment is to trace your way from here back to your parents' house on the map up there on the wall.
If I really sat down and focused, I probably could, but it would take a little bit.
If you really sat down, you just make my case for me.
What?
If you really sat down and focused.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what the map reading is about.
Who wants to do that? Come on, like I'm not spending. I mean, it's just a waste of time. Just
Siri, how do I get to where I'm going?
Yeah, I actually have a preset of home in my on my map. So all I gotta do is press 1, 2, and it's already gonna take me home. I already got a preset, so I don't even have to type in the address in my phone.
So sad for you.
Hey, it's efficient and convenient.
All right, listen, we got plenty on tap. I'm gonna kick off the topic right now to tell you where we're going. Election consequences. So several things are happening right now, not the least of which is the fact that we have several states that are moving forward in support of the same executive order that President Trump has issued on the federal level. Because remember, Trump's executive order was as to federal elections. The thing that we need to see happen is the Federal SAVE Act by Congress, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then also states passing their own state laws so that it becomes state and federal elections that way. Good luck getting California, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, Delaware, Maine to do it. But some of the other states are already out there, and Alabama, Tennessee, we need to get on board. But Wyoming got ahead of the game, and coming up in a few minutes, we'll have a discussion with Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray about the fact that they just literally passed a law, and it's going into effect, I believe, July 1st, that requires proof of citizenship in order to be able to vote in their state elections. This is the way forward, in my opinion. But then a couple of things I want to make sure you guys are tracking, one of which is what's happening in Wisconsin tomorrow. Wisconsin, why do we care about Wisconsin, Phil? I'm going to tell you in detail why you need to care about Wisconsin. And I told you a little bit about it last week. Well, I've got an update now. Tomorrow's election in Wisconsin could have national impact. And if you want to see the Trump agenda move forward without having to watch and see another round of Nancy Pelosi, well, then you may want to know what's happening in Wisconsin and pray them through for tomorrow. All right, we're taking a break right now. We'll come right back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. I mean, just making common sense like a superpower. All right, so we got a situation going on in Wisconsin. Let me remind you guys what's happening up there. I mentioned it briefly last week. Some of y'all probably heard it then. Some of y'all are tracking it on your own. I know I had one texter a while ago that brought it, to my attention, even though I already had the resources ready to roll. But here's a piece from Fox News that just kind of outlines it. So I saw this past weekend. Senator Ron Johnson, who's a Republican from Wisconsin, he was on the Sunday Morning Futures with, what's her name on Fox? I just lost her. Marita Bartiromo. And a great interview. And he's always a good interview anyway. He's talking about financial issues and fiscal responsibility and budgeting, but then they switch gears and they went into the election. It's his home state. And he said, if you want to see Trump be president and be effective for the next 4 years, he said, you've got to get out and vote for, and his name's Brad Schimmel. He said, this is a crucial race. By the way, in case you're not familiar, this is not a congressional race. This is not a race for governor. This is a race, believe it or not, for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Why do we care? Well, I'll tell you why we care. Because right now, the Democrats are already saying they see this as a battleground opportunity. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has already said once, he said, we Democrats have to win this race, meaning that one, the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, so that we can turn these Republican congressional seats into Democrat congressional seats. And literally, that's a total tip-off, isn't it? I mean, how much more obvious can you be? Because what we're looking at is the Democrats in Wisconsin believe that they can get the lines redrawn in a way that's favorable to them and potentially be able to quickly flip 2 seats coming up in their congressional races. Look at the margins we have right now in D.C. 2 votes could make two more congressional votes could make all the difference in the world. And the last thing I want to see, last thing any of us want to see, is another Trump administration hamstrung by a Nancy Pelosi witch hunt. All of a sudden you've got, let's do impeachments and let's do Russia, and let's do everything in the world we can to stop the Trump agenda. First of all, I think this is a part of why Trump is not wasting time enacting so much right off. I mean, the first 100 days have been blistering, and rightfully so, because the last thing you want to see happen is something jeopardize the balance of power. They've got the ability to do it. But this race right now, this Wisconsin race, the Supreme Court of Wisconsin is believed to be potentially able to flip liberal for the first time ever on this one race. If that happens, the Wisconsin Supreme Court could very well be the body who determines whether or not the lines that are drawn for congressional races in the redistricting process are to be upheld or not. What that basically means is this one race could decide the balance of power in Congress. You see the trickle-down effects? Maybe it's trickle up. But the reality is this is a big, hairy deal. So right now, I mean, last night, literally, Elon Musk held a rally in Wisconsin for a state Supreme Court race. Trump endorsed the guy named Brad Schimmel, who is the Republican. Elon Musk has raised and donated upwards of $10 million for this one guy. It's the most expensive state judicial race in history, anywhere. The Democrat is someone named Crawford. What's her first name? Let me see where it is here. Susan Crawford. Susan Crawford has earned financial support from liberal billionaire George Soros. Oh, go figure. Millions have been poured into her coffers as well. And listen, I don't know who this group supports. They say they're bipartisan, but there's a group called Fair Elections Wisconsin that is now submitted as of 2 days ago. I got this off of LifeSet. 2 days ago, Fair Elections Wisconsin raised concerns about nearly 5,000 allegedly illegal voter registrations just in Milwaukee alone. Well, I take it back. It's got to be statewide, Milwaukee. Okay, they filed it in Milwaukee. 4,878 registrations they're calling into question. Now, is it all legit? I don't know. Some of them they say just have missing apartment numbers, things like that. But they found hundreds that had moved out of the county, moved out of the state. Hundreds who were no longer living where they said they lived when they voted. I'm not sure how they check all this, but the reality is they are saying they've got proof that there's at least 5,000, almost 5,000 votes that shouldn't even be counting. And that's what we're talking about today. Elections have consequences. So there you have one of the most consequential state level elections in recent history in Wisconsin. At the same time, you've got questions about whether or not their voter registration is current and accurate. So what we're looking at now is every election having the potential to affect every other election, and it all starts with registering people to vote with accuracy. You've got to be able to register people to vote who are otherwise allowed to vote, and then once they vote, you accurately tabulate the vote and then certify the vote in a timely manner. All those things have to happen. And voter integrity is more than just, did you count the votes right? Sometimes voter integrity is, who's even signed up? That's why it's so important that what just happened in Wyoming, which seems to support what President Trump did in his executive order, is what we're going to talk about. Coming right back, I'm going to have Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray. You're going to want to hear what he has to say about how Wyoming has already taken steps that I think Alabama, Tennessee, and all the rest of our states need to take. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Right Side Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Right Side studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international, and oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 on a Meatloaf Monday, because it's always about the food. But yeah, Meatloaf Monday, and the topic right now we're talking about is election consequences. So do elections have consequences? Yes, and there are consequential elections. And I'm telling you, it's going to take conservatives not laying down and allowing things to just happen. And I was proud to be in the state Senate in Alabama when we passed voter ID. Big deal. We were told we were racist, all the things were bad, and everything was going to Chicken Little, the sky was falling, and it didn't happen. And now we have these really tight elections that we actually get the results back that night, and no one's disenfranchised. Go figure. But there's still more that can be done. You know, we've had Alabama Secretary of State Wes Allen on multiple times, as recently as last week, talking about the efforts to clean up the voter rolls and to do things that, you know, work with other states to clean up our rolls and compare information. Well, one of those that I have most recently come aware of is Wyoming's Secretary of State, Chuck Gray. So Secretary of State Chuck Gray from Wyoming, he's been in office since 2022. Prior to that, he was in the Wyoming House of Representatives. He's a former radio guy, by the way. KVOC out of Casper, Wyoming, had his own radio show. In March of 22, by the way, he announced he would run for Secretary of State, was endorsed by Donald Trump, won the Republican primary, won the race. You'll also be interested to know that aside from the fact that he works hard on election integrity issues, that he's also part of the reason why Liz Cheney is no longer in office, and I'm glad to have that. Without further ado, Secretary of State Chuck Gray, welcome to Right Side Radio. How you doing?
Phil, great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, listen, if I say things like y'all and stuff like that, you understand what I'm saying, right?
I understand it, and I love it. Great to be on.
Hey, listen, by the way, you've been a conservative warrior. We call those right side ruffians on our show. We can see it in your record, and you've been a CPAC award winner. But I love what you have been fighting for, and really even fighting your governor over, for election integrity in Wyoming. Tell us about it.
We had a huge week for election integrity here in Wyoming and nationally with the passage in the 2025 general session of House Bill 156, which was proof of citizenship and proof of residency for registering to vote. This has been sort of a 2-year process getting this through. In 2023, we actually brought a rulemaking. It's my first year in office as Wyoming Secretary of State. We brought a rulemaking to require proof of residency for registering to vote and put procedures in place to stop illegal aliens from voting, because we really saw this issue of stopping illegals from voting coming to the forefront, the need for us to address this and to have upfront proof in place of citizenship and proof of residency. And unfortunately, the governor decided to veto that rulemaking in early 2024.
Wow.
Literally on the same day, Phil, as President Trump announced with Speaker Johnson that they were going to be bringing through the SAVE Act, which is proof of citizenship for registering to vote at the federal level.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that juxtaposition. You have this weak insider rhino Republican governor who is vetoing the very thing that President Trump and Speaker Johnson are putting forward in early April 2024. We didn't give up. We said we're going to go to the legislature in the 2025 general session. It became our number one priority, election integrity priority, bringing through proof of citizenship and proof of residency for registering to vote. We got it through the legislature, and the governor, in a decision that was handed to me about a week ago, the governor said that he would not veto the bill, even though he also said he would not sign it. We had very forward-thinking founders in our state, and they put into our state constitution that a pocket veto is not allowed. So either the governor has to explicitly veto a bill or it becomes law without his signature. So even though he wouldn't sign it, it became law without his signature, and it sort of capped off a 2-year standoff with the governor on this issue, and I'm glad he backed down, and it was the people of Wyoming that won when he did.
I think absolutely. By the way, we still have the pocket veto in Alabama, and it's very frustrating at times to watch that happen. But I think if the governor has not signed the legislation within 15 days of the legislature ending its session, it is considered vetoed automatically at that point. But so listen,
really?
I guess
you have the opposite out there.
Oh yeah, we do. It's not good. But I'm assuming that you and the governor in Wyoming don't have Sunday brunch together on a regular basis. But
no, we've had a back and forth, really going back to when I was a legislator, and the Secretary of State also serves as the second in command for the state. That's in our state constitution as well. So It's also sort of the lieutenant governor, and so we're always in he's very weak, and I've been working for over a decade to grow the conservative group in the legislature and also in statewide elected office. And we, just this last cycle, are the first state in the nation to have a Freedom Caucus majority in our state house. And he's very upset about that. So we're in a lot of back and forth trying to bring through, as we bring through conservative items through the legislature, and also bringing to the forefront when he's not honest. I mean, which is all the time, frankly.
Oh my gosh. Well, listen, we could talk all day about that, but let me go back to this citizenship requirement. So it almost feels like common sense, and yet we keep having to legislate common sense because we're always dealing with people who don't have common sense. But with regards to the proof of citizenship, what do y'all accept as proof of citizenship, and what were the arguments against you doing this?
Well, the arguments, it's that same group, the insiders, the Democrats, the media, that same group we see at the federal level. And then also, Phil, I know you being involved in state politics, I'm sure you've seen down there in Alabama, and they trot out these same golden oldie arguments, those arguments that they think we want to hear, but we don't. And this time it was the same thing. I mean, they say, well, it blocks access. There's a broad consensus for these measures. Scott Rasmussen just released polling, Phil, 2 weeks ago, that over 90% of Americans support proof of citizenship for registering to vote. Over 90%, Phil. I mean, and that's not just supermajorities of Republicans and independents. I mean, that's also supermajorities of Democrats. That's the only way you get to 90% nationally supporting this common sense measure.
I like to say that if you tried to poll, do you love your mama, you wouldn't get 90%.
Exactly. I mean, you're absolutely right. But on election integrity items, there's a broad consensus. I think it goes back to the 2020 election fiasco, and that brought to the forefront the need for us to bring forward these election integrity items. And of course, President Trump is doing great work signing this executive order last week as well on advancing election integrity.
So when folks in Wyoming now come to register to vote, what documentation do you accept as proof of citizenship? Do they have to have a birth certificate? Do they have to have what do they have to bring with them?
When they register to vote, a Wyoming ID, meaning either a driver's license or a state-issued ID, which we issue for free to individuals that have renounced their license, say if they're elderly and they don't want to have a license anymore. So we issue for free Wyoming ID, which has the same security measures as the driver's license.
Right.
And because we're Real ID compliant, we have that citizenship check. So that's sort of the one way to be able to register and show that proof of citizenship. And then, of course, the passport counts. And it goes all the way down the list to a birth certificate if you don't have a driver's license or a Wyoming ID. An out-of-state ID that complies with Real ID because it's Real ID compliant also satisfies the requirements of the act.
Okay, and I don't suspect there'd be any trouble with the military. I don't recall what military presence there is in Wyoming, but I would assume if someone is transient, like they have an ID from a different state because they've now been assigned there in a military capacity or something like that, that you still honor that and there's no problem there.
Well, exactly like you said, that's why we allow those out-of-state IDs that are Real ID compliant. Also, military ID that has that citizenship check is compliant. Proof of residency is also part of that, and the documents that are compliant with that are different. So if you have an out-of-state ID that you show, driver's license, that will trigger further documentation that needs to be shown for the proof of residence requirement, but that's different from the proof of citizenship requirement. So when you think about it in terms of election integrity, you have election integrity items at the time of registration, and that the gold standard would be proof of identity, proof of residency, and proof of citizenship. That's the 3 boxes. And then when you show up to vote, you're on the voter rolls. You prove who you say you are with voter ID, and that's voter ID. And so that's sort of the process from T to green for election integrity.
Well, the reality is this is supposed to be common sense, and I think there are most countries in the world care about who registers to vote for those that are Democratic, and the idea that we haven't done this before, you look at it and go, why are we just now doing this? I mean, this should be common sense. Well, it's because we've never had so much of a need as we do now. And when we get back, if you don't mind, I tell you what, Mr. Secretary, if you don't mind, could you hang on during a break? We'll take a quick break right now, just a few minutes, and then we'll come right back. I want to jump into the executive order and the SAVE Act, which is still pending in D.C., and how it lines up with what you did in Wyoming, all right?
That'd be great, Phil.
Okay, thanks so much. We're on right now with Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray. Man, he's been leading the nation, if you get down to it, at what it means at the state level to require proof of citizenship when registering to vote. It's really common sense. But then again, we keep having to legislate common sense. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, we're going back to the phones with a special guest. Wyoming's Secretary of State Chuck Gray is doing amazing work out there, leading the conservative cause for election integrity, among other issues, by the way. But election integrity is what we're talking about today. Mr. Secretary, thanks again for being here on Rightside. We appreciate your time. We really appreciate what you're doing. Let me ask you this. What you guys did in Wyoming, which is a state model, really kind of mirrors what we're seeing with regards to what's known as the SAVE Act, which is still stuck in Congress. And then we also have Trump's executive order. How do they all mesh together?
Well, we're really working on this issue of proof of citizenship for registering to vote. And the SAVE Act is basically an attempt to have proof of citizenship for registering to vote, particularly targeting states that are subject to the National Voter Registration Act. That's 44 states. Now, Wyoming is one of the 6 states that technically is exempt from the act. That goes back to the early 1990s when, because Wyoming had same-day registration, we're not subject to it, and that's why it was part of why it was very important that we put proof of citizenship for registering to vote in our election code. But this SAVE Act, which is being brought up for a vote this week, it's being debated in House Rules this afternoon in D.C. and could be up for a vote as soon as tomorrow, but we're thinking that it might also be Thursday, is proof of citizenship for registering to vote at the federal level for all the states that are subject to the National Voter Registration Act, and then it requires the 6 states that are exempt to have a very similar requirement in their respective election codes. So that's what is being brought to the Congress, and then the executive order from last week, really great executive order from President Trump. And I'll tell you, Phil, I mean, this 100-day press release, when it comes out, it's going to be like a book for the first 100 days of the Trump administration. I mean, they are getting so much done. He's doing an awesome job. And this executive order requires the federal voter registration form, which is part of the National Voter Registration Act, to have a proof of citizenship question, meaning that the executive order requires proof of citizenship as part of the National Voter Registration Act. The executive order also really ramps up voter list maintenance procedures and orders agencies of the federal government to partner with chief election officials around the nation, like myself, to partner with us on data sharing to ensure that only citizens are voting, that only residents of the state are voting, and then it also puts in place a request of the Department of Justice to prioritize election integrity and particularly prioritizing the issue of foreign funding of elections, which was also work that we did in the recently completed legislative session to close some loopholes in federal law, in state statute, to ensure that there is no foreign funding of elections, and that's a pivotal part of this executive order as well.
You look at some of this and you think it's amazing that we're having to do this, but you go back and look at the 2020 election that we had, and then since then, the influx of millions upon millions of illegal aliens across our borders, and you realize we'd better do this now. We better pass the SAVE Act. We better get these executive orders, and we better have more states do like Wyoming did to protect and preserve our ability to have trustworthy elections, or we're going to wind up just watching it all go by the wayside one day.
Absolutely. We have to be proactive, and we have to respond to the problems that we've seen. One of the things in the executive order, which is just another common sense item, is a requirement that states not accept ballots after the polls close. I mean, and that's pretty common sense. Once the polls close, that should be the stopping point. And some states do accept ballots after the polls close, and it's been an enormous problem. Now, Wyoming, we say that all the ballots have to be delivered when the polls close. All absentee ballots have to have been delivered. Now, other states, I mean, they'll take them as long as they have a postmark for weeks, and that's why this counting takes weeks. And so one of the many things that President Trump's executive order does is it says that we're going to have a requirement that look, all the ballots need to be received. All the absentee ballots need to be received when the polls close.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I got to leave it there. We got about 20 seconds till the music starts playing, but you are indeed a right side ruffian. We're going to make sure you get one of our T-shirts. But I really appreciate the work you're doing. I appreciate your time, and stay in the fight. All right.
Thanks, Phil. Great to be on. Stay in touch.
All right. Thank you so much. That was Wyoming's Secretary of State. I mean, on this show, we will go out and find people anywhere and everywhere who can lend to the right side ruffian message. And you guys just heard a great one right there. That's Wyoming's Secretary of State, Chuck Gray, who's been at even odds with his own Republican governor for the last 2 years trying to get legislation passed that would just basically say, hey, you know what? If you want to vote in Wyoming, you got to actually have an ID. And oh, by the way, you got to prove that you're a citizen of the country. How about that? Is that hard? It shouldn't be, but apparently it is for some people. How about this? Alabama and Tennessee, we need to get on board. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all are talking about this show. Whew. Goes like from Huntsville all the way back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that loveliest little town on the plains going to the Final Four, Auburn. And I mean, yes, indeedy, crossing the border into what we recall Fort Benning, Georgia. And then just big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in, just for good measure. I got a bunch of text messages I'll be catching up on here momentarily. I got to remind you guys, too, Rightside Media is the parent company of Rightside Radio. We do a ton of stuff. And I want to encourage you guys to check our stuff out. So, and here's one of the things I would ask you to do. I mean, every once in a while, I have to ask if you would do something for us. We are allowed to grow as a company on the platforms we're on, and we're on all of them. I mean, we're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on, Twitter, Rumble. I've said Twitter already. Rumble, YouTube. Even got written stuff on Substack. What I'm saying is this: if you're able to, we would greatly appreciate if you would hit like or follow on whichever one of those platforms you're on, especially on YouTube. And I say that because it's not just because we want more likes. It's because those platforms allow us to do more things if we grow our followers. And so you guys are streaming us online live. If you haven't already, please do a follow or a like. That would mean the world to us. If you're going to YouTube and watching our podcast, because we have a ton of podcasts. We have 5 different video podcasts outside of the radio show itself. And they're all up on our YouTube channel. Then hit follow or hit subscribe. There's no charge. You don't get spam. You just get basically the opportunity for Rightside to continue growing. And so that would mean the world to us if you do it. So let me ask you a question, JP.
What's that?
Have you ever had to show proof of ID to do anything?
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. It was a fair question, but
yeah.
it was like a rhetorical almost. But So I just had to make plans for a trip I got to take for business coming up in the near future. And it's amazing what kind of information I had to give just to be allowed to get a plane ticket. And then pretty soon they're about to have this Star ID thing, which is, man, I got to do it. I hate it, but I got to do it. And if you want to fly anywhere, you got to go through the processes of getting the Star ID. You've seen that before, I guess.
Yeah, yes.
And then, what about stuff like, if you want to get a Costco card, you got to fill out the forms and, on and on and on. But one of the most aggravating is if you want to deal with the IRS. So for my other business, for the law firm, we had to, we do our things. We file our 1099s with all our vendors over the year. We have to get them in by a certain time. And we had to go through the whole process of getting what's called ID.me set up. My gosh, I had to go proof of citizenship. I had to do biometrics where they saw my face. I had to let them read my eye scan. I had to give them a thumbprint. Then I had to give them front and back of my driver's license. And then I had to give them the tax ID number for the business. It went to the point that I finally said, I've got a birthmark on my right leg. Would you like to see it? And it was maddening. And yet we require less for people to vote in most states.
Literally there's no other way to explain it other than states wanting to, or a certain party wanted to partake in voter fraud, it seems. Because that's literally the only explanation I can find from it.
Well, I know what they'll say because I've heard them say it.
Yes.
It's a constitutional right. We can't infringe upon, you're disenfranchising them from a No, we're not. We're preserving the constitutional right.
You know what else is a constitutional right? Is a right to bear arms. You got to show your ID to have a background check to buy a gun.
Did you just go there?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Well played, sir.
Yeah. But like you said, I feel like of anything that would be one you'd have to show your ID for the most, and all this other silly stuff that you have to show ID for. It's I feel like voting in elections should be on a pedestal of the most important stuff to show an ID for. So
yeah,
well, and all their quote reasons of it's racist or it's constitutional right or whatever. It's all just a facade for the bottom line of. Obviously, they want funny business in elections. That's the only explanation I can draw from it.
Brother, wait until you buy your first house. The day's coming. I know it is. And just wait until you fill out the paperwork for that one.
Yeah, I bet.
Good Lord. All right, some of you guys have been texting in throughout, and it goes. Some of it relates back to the original monologue for the show today. So let me just jump back and get some text messages and stay current on that. Appreciate this audience more than y'all could possibly imagine. Handyman from Caddo, Alabama says, "As long as you tell my wife to take the blue road up on the map, we'll all be fine." The blue road, okay, fair enough. Roy from Hartselle says, "Phil, I'm old enough to remember when a map was free with a fill up at a service station. Nowadays, it's hard to find a service station." Yes, they used to call them service stations because you get your car serviced while you were there. You had a guy who ran out there and he was proud to clean your windshield, pump gas for you. I mean, do we have full service stations anymore?
Not that I've seen, no.
Wow.
Get your oil change, get all that is.
Goober is gone. There's no more Goober's Garage anymore. Fill her up for you. Okay. Mike from Harvest. Naval maps are even more fun to read. There's no landmarks. There's none. You get out in the middle, it's like lat longs. That's all you got. By the way, so one of the favorite tricks to do with somebody who's just now learning how to read maps in the military is tell them, look, now you walk out there till you find that grid line on the ground. There's no grid lines on the ground. Grid lines are on the map.
Yeah.
See, you walk out there and you find that grid line on the ground, and then once you've got it, you count how many paces it is to the next grid line. And tell me what you get.
Then they'll never find a grid line.
Yes, Drill Sergeant. And then they run off smartly trying to find a grid line. David from Huntsville says, "Phil, thanks for talking about Wisconsin and Florida." Thank you. You appreciate it, David. Appreciate you. The Ruminating Rocker from Flint Creek says, "I stay up to date on maps at rest stops." Okay.
How do you stay up to date?
I don't know.
It's like the new version of the map dropped.
Hey, I'm checking your maps out. What do you got over here? Bert from Owens Crossroads. Hey, Bert. Says, ask JP if he can use an analog watch as a compass. It's a trick. It's a trick, man.
I've never had to know. Actually,
have you ever had to follow a compass?
So one time we went on a field trip and we did compass training.
Did you?
And so part of the fun of it was we had a partner, and that partner was blindfolded, spin around in a circle, and then as the other person is using a compass, is having to direct them into a certain spot on the compass, like do certain spot east, and the other person's like walking, and right, left. So yeah, that was I think we spent a whole day learning how to read compasses, but that was 7 years ago, so I haven't done it since.
It was a perishable skill.
Yeah.
But listen, I mean, to me, land navigation was one of my favorites. I usually did really well at it, and nightland nav, nightland nav, where you hope that the glowing bezel on your compass is not going to go out, and you have to keep recharging it. But finding your way in the dark where all you've got is a compass because you can't see where you're going. And the wait-a-minute vines are grabbing your ankles everywhere you go, and I've fallen in a ditch more than once, and then you hear the snort because there's a wild pig somewhere in the brush. You're like, oh my gosh, but you got to follow that azimuth.
Yeah, and you look around and everything around you looks the same.
Everything looks the same. Mm-hmm. Mike from Arab says, by the way, but I found my way. Thank you very much. Mike from Arab says, hey, Phil, ask him, I guess he means Secretary Gray, would he join the task force in the Trump administration to make sure a federal voter ID is enforced by 20? I'm sure he would. I have no doubt that he would.
I told you during the break, he was telling it like it is.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think he would for sure.
And I would go with him. Devin from Brownsboro says, avid Alabama fan here, but I'll be rooting for Auburn in the Final Four. War Eagle. Devin, appreciate you.
You're not avid enough.
Devin, would you please talk to JP just for a minute?
I got too much Bama in me.
JP, Are you not going to root for Auburn?
No.
Come on.
Absolutely not.
Are you really?
Mm-mm.
Tell me you're not voting for Florida.
Well, I mean.
Oh, I know what it is. You want it to be Duke so you could say you lost to the number one team.
No, not really. I'm not even a big Duke. I mean, I want the SEC to win, but not Auburn. No.
But your mom's a Duke fan.
Yeah, but I'm not. I mean, I'm a Bama fan. So it's.
Don't make me call your mom.
I can't live in the same state and hear it from Auburn fans all offseason if Auburn wins it. That's my reasoning. So there you go.
Well, you're going to hear it anyway because they work with me every day.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, if y'all lose, I mean, as long as – see, right now, Bruce Pearl and Nate Oates are even. They've only made the Final Four, okay? So if they get any further, then they're going to have a talking point to say Bruce Pearl's a better coach. We can't have that. I can't have that.
You see what I'm doing right now?
That's the double one.
I pulled the double call God out on you. David at Buc-ee's is saying, Phil, first service gas station? ? Says you now have to look for the air pump and pay $2 to make sure your tires are at proper pressure. That is so true. and you work at Buc-ee's. That is so true. It's kind of maddening that you have to pay for air. I guess really what you're doing, you're paying for the use of their pump, but still.
Can you imagine if Buc-ee's was a full service station, the amount of service employees that would have to have at each pump?
Well, there's 128 pumps. So, yeah, I mean, you could deploy half the county just at Buc-ee's. John from Huntsville says, when I go hiking, I never use maps. If I get lost, I just listen for the sound of a car and walk towards it. Okay. I'm not sure that's what I would call
good luck with that.
Good land navigation skills, but I get your point. You can almost always find your way out to with water. Moving water flows downhill, flows downstream. But you know, and you know, one thing I was never good at was navigating by stars. Now I know a little bit of it, but I mean I'm talking about in the woods. Now I'm going to chase a rabbit for a minute. I was talking to a friend of mine who had been through the Special Forces qualification course. And the land nav at SFQC is the Q course they call it is really solid. It was really solid at Ranger School too, but I've heard it's even more so at the Q course for SF. And he said that you know, it was a big deal. They got out there on land nav, day land nav. They get in and there's this one South African guy who is like already done. He's got his feet up on a log smoking a cigarette. Like, how'd you get done so fast? It's easy. It just, you know, follow the sun. Like, what? Yeah, follow the sun. At nighttime, they come back in. Everybody's smoked. They're just worn out. He's already sitting there chilled, eating half an MRE. How'd you get done so fast? It's easy. Follow stars. Just follow stars. Turns out he was, believe it or not, it was back in the day, he was a South African man tracker. He used to be the guy who they brought out to hunt rebels through the bush, and he literally would track them using starlight and everything else. And so there was nothing they were teaching him.
Yeah, I bet. No, but also you'd have to be in an area where there's no light pollution. They can actually see all the stars too.
That does help.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Roy from Hartselle says, Phil, Tankersley on the corner of Highway 31 and 36 is as close to full service as you get. Tankersley's. Okay. I have not been there, but I may have to do it just to see what it's like to have somebody pump my gas for me one day. Mike from Arab said, I couldn't do this because I'm a Christian and married, LOL, but I always said if you had, okay, I'm not going to go there. He's talking about doing like a Hooters version of a full serve station. He said you'd make a killing. Mike, I suspect you're right. Jack from Huntsville says, amongst my plethora of jobs, I have as a Ute. Oh, as a Ute. Okay. I was an automotive petroleum administration engineer. I checked the oil. I washed the windshield on every car that came in. Wow. As a Ute, he said. So when he was a Ute, he was an automotive petroleum administrative engineer, an APE. All right, last two, and then we'll go to a break. Tom with all the kids in Huntsville. Tom with all the kids says, back in the day, I was pretty good at land nav and PLDC. I took off running from my first point, got there, realized I dropped my map and protractor. After backtracking and losing an hour, I found somebody else's map that they dropped. Wasn't the first one done, but I finished in time. That's what counts, brother. That's what counts. Kim from Danville says, I don't know where John's hiking, but where I go, you don't hear highways. You may hear a coyote or a wild hog, but that doesn't help you find your way. Indeed. And then last one, John from Huntsville again says, if Duke wins the championship, I will win the JP Madness bracket. But if Duke loses, JP wins the JP Madness bracket. What happens if Auburn wins? Neither one of you win the bracket.
No, I still win because John's bracket's awful.
But you're buying me a steak. All right, take a break. Taking a break right now. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just, man, saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, so we're going to change gears and go to the next dipper in schedule here. The state of Greenland. The state of Greenland. State, as in the United States of America, 51st state being Greenland. I thought it was going to be Canada. Nah, they got too many problems. State of Greenland has a nice ring to it. Where are you from? I'm from the 51st state of Greenland. Is it going to be a state? Probably not. But I think what you're watching right now is really, this is one of those cases where people laugh when Trump says stuff sometimes, and later on they realize, holy crap, he was right. And they shouldn't laugh at this. And I can tell you right now that I like to think that it's, to some degree, I am a reasonably well-read individual, that I understand, to some degree, geopolitical politics, and I look at things through the lens of conservatism, but I also see them in the bigger picture, and I try to do that. I'm a student of, world history to some degree, military history especially, and I don't think I'd ever really focused on Greenland. I didn't realize that the Nazis wanted Greenland during World War II. I didn't realize to the extent that Greenland has the geography that it does, the landmass. I didn't realize until Trump pointed out that Russia and China were encroaching upon Greenland. Now, we have a presence there, we do. Now, Greenland, if you're not familiar, is a massive landmass that straddles from the North Atlantic up to the Arctic Ocean, and it literally hits the Arctic Circle. A lot of it is under ice. It's untenable. Has a very small population. I want to say the population is like under 100,000. It's pretty small.
We've looked this up before. I think it was smaller than the city of Madison last time.
I think it was like maybe even like 50,000. Now that I think about it,
56,000.
56,000 is the population of the nation of Greenland, which, by the way, is a part of the Danish kingdom. So Denmark actually has the rights to Greenland. They fall under the crown, but they are semi-autonomous, and they do have their own prime minister. But it's a very small community. I mean, it's one of those things where the prime minister may wind up sitting there having coffee next to you in the cafe. It's that small, right? But what they have is an amazing location, an amazing amount of ground, and we're also learning they have an amazing amount of untapped natural resources, to include rare earth minerals. And, oh, by the way, there are some that say that Greenland is the front door to the Arctic. And the Arctic is more and more, as technology gives us the ability to do things in the colder regions of the world, the Arctic is now looking like a place where we need to have a presence. Well, Phil, why do we really care? Why would we not care? So here's the thing. If you are one of 10 people and all 10 of you have an opportunity to do something, are you going to be the guy who slow walks or the guy who runs for it? That's where we are on the world stage. The Arctic is untapped. It is nobody's and everybody's all at the same time. And the Arctic is filled with natural resources. And the Arctic is also a place where our enemies can encroach and hide and make use and mine and do the things that, the bottom line is this. J.D. Vance went to Greenland the other day, and in his speech he said, and I'm going to quote it here. I pulled this off a Daily Signal. He said, "We know that Russia and China and other nations are taking extraordinary interest in Arctic passageways, Arctic naval routes, and indeed in the minerals of the Arctic territories." He said, "We need to ensure that America is leading in the Arctic, because we know if America doesn't, that other nations will fill that gap and we will fall behind." That's the point. Why would you on the world stage think of things as anything but where we want to be the leader? There's no place in the world we don't want to be the leader. And the Arctic and Greenland are a forefront right now on that. I'll tell you more about it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, as part of that national/international, we're talking about Greenland right now. The state of Greenland, I think it'd be bigger than Alaska. I mean, it's huge. Greenland is massive.
Bigger by a good bit.
Texas would have to sit up and take note that it would suddenly be the third largest state.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't let that go, though.
No.
So Greenland. So back in 2019, let's think about this, how this all came to be. Back in 2019, during his first term, President Trump, he announced that he was exploring the idea of whether the United States should purchase Greenland. And the whole world kind of sat up their chairs and went, what? And of course, then all the chattering class, they began just like having just like hernias as they were laughing so hard because they thought this is the silliest thing they'd ever heard. In fact, I found a quote. Where was that? Yeah, here's a quote from a piece that I pulled off a town hall. It says this. Back in 2019, it says, the media's response was to snicker, shrug, and move on. CNN rolled its eyes. Colbert did a monologue. The Atlantic called it neo-colonial buffoonery. And then it says, but of course they did. Because it's easier to mock than to think, easier to sneer than to analyze, easier to play hipster geopolitics than it is to acknowledge when a Republican president might actually be thinking ahead. All right, they point out in this article, and this is so well said, that critics, if they had talked Thomas Jefferson out of the Louisiana Purchase, where would we be right now? If Secretary of State William Seward had been, talked out of negotiating the so-called folly of buying Alaska from the Russians, where would we be right now? Both those moves were derided at the time, and they are genius now. I don't think we're going to wind up buying Greenland, I'll be honest with you. I mean, Greenland's prime minister right now, too, is on the record. I got this piece off of Reuters, Dateline yesterday. The United States will not get Greenland, says Prime Minister Jens Friedrich Nielsen in his Facebook post on Sunday. But then Trump came back and says, yeah, we'll get Greenland 100%. So classic. J.D. Vance led a delegation there the other day. It got some attention. The Danes didn't like it. I guess I understand that. The Danes didn't like it. The rulers of, or say the rulers, the elected rulers, leaders, if you will, of Greenland didn't like it. But what's interesting is it's very popular. The idea of the United States having a bigger presence is very popular with the citizens, generally speaking, of Greenland. And we already have some basing there. We have Thule Air Force Base, I believe it is, and we have a thing called Patuxent Space Base in Greenland. And that's one of our early warning, missile warning defense systems locations. In fact, Vance even told the men and women there when he was speaking to them that if a missile was fired from an enemy country or enemy submarine into the United States, it's the people here before us who would give notice to our brave men and women further south in the United States to let us know what was coming, and God willing to try and shoot it down. So yeah, it's strategically located. There's a lot of reasons why this has to be looked at. Do I think that we're going to wind up buying it, making it a state? I don't. But I definitely see what I would call either a large acquisition or an alliance with Greenland in the very near future. You have something to say? I thought I saw you key your mic.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would say is purchasing, absolutely. I feel like we should try our best to purchase it, but I can already... Obviously, the left is already saying that we're about to militarily invade Greenland and take it from Denmark,
Yeah,
which
we're not doing that.
I feel like it's a given. I feel like I shouldn't have to say, but I feel like I almost do have to say that majority Republicans are not for that and wouldn't be wouldn't be for militarily trying to take Greenland.
Trump's not for that either.
But that's what I mean. Is I think I saw some report about how he's not taking it off the table, which I think is just another example of Trump going to the extreme end and, working backwards where everything's on the table. But I guarantee you Trump is not actually considering militarily invading Greenland and taking it from Denmark.
No, he's not. And here's the thing. Greenland is vital for a variety of reasons, all right? It is. And the more I've studied it, the more I'm convinced of this. Greenland is vital for a number of reasons. It's one report I read calls it a frozen fortress. It just sits there like right smack between, literally it's right smack between Europe and America. It's only about 2,000 miles from Washington, D.C. It's actually really close. It's closer than going to Texas from Washington, D.C. It gives basically what they call a front door into the Arctic. And like I said a moment ago, the Arctic is a largely untapped, massive tranche of natural resources. And then you've got the fact that we already do host a military presence there. It already does host a military presence there for the United States. Like I said, Thule Air Force Base and Patuxent Space Base. Russia is ramping up its military presence in the Arctic. It just is. Don't try to say it's not, because it is. Beijing, by the way, recently declared itself a, quote, near Arctic state. What does that even mean? A near Arctic state? No, you're not. Yes, we are. We're close enough to where we can go. Well, China won't do that, will they? Have you watched what China's doing in the South China Sea? China is building fake islands in the South China Sea to claim that extends their territorial waters. I mean, they're just basically laying claim to what they want. China is territorial. China is literally trying to grow its presence on the world stage, and they're doing it not just politically, they're doing it geographically. China wants this. China, a few years ago, by the way, initiated what it called its Polar Silk Route. The Polar Silk Route. So you know about the Silk Road from ancient times, and that was where Chinese goods and other goods going back and forth to China, Marco Polo, all of it, the Silk Road. Well, the Polar Silk Road is now, I guess I would have to liken it to like they're forming what would be the equivalent for trade and power projection purposes, as almost like having a Panama Canal through the Arctic. I mean, they're not digging a canal, but what they're doing is they're forging their means to get through, and they're creating these passageways, and they're exploiting the opportunity to be in the Arctic. And what does that mean? Well, that means they're going to control trade routes. Then they'll set up protectionism, and then they'll set up their military presence to guard what they think they found. Then they'll begin exploiting resources because they'll claim that nobody else had it, so they took it. China is going to take what it wants to take. If we can forge an alliance with Denmark that gives us massive influence in Greenland, we have protected our sovereign territory. We have protected the people of Greenland, actually. We have an opportunity to gain resources that on the world stage would give us a leg up, because so much of the world's natural resources, like rare earth minerals, are actually found in China and in places that are not friendly to us. But right now, China is investing billions in their Arctic infrastructure. And we're sitting here with the press rolling their eyes because Trump's wanting to talk about it. All right, so as trade, as power projection, as just international travel looks more and more at the idea of the Arctic being someplace we want to be, you've got China and Russia collaboratively working on their Silk Road, their Arctic Silk Road. All right, so in the middle of all of this, what are we doing? Well, the story on Town Hall also came out just yesterday, actually today. And it says, why don't we buy Greenland? Can we? Would they sell it to us? I don't know. When we bought Alaska for $7.2 million, which in today's dollars is like $160 million. Think about what that means to us now, especially with just the fact that we not only have massive amounts of, of course we have the Alaskan gold rush, we have the Alaskan fishing and crabbing, we have any number of natural resources there, not to mention the fact that we have oil and gas out of the Anwar. It's huge. And it all started with an acquisition, a friendly acquisition. Louisiana Purchase, same way. Why would we not think this way? Why would we not? And I think that's where we have to be. With Trump, you often find that whereas most people enter the discussion, they'll say, well, I don't know that we can. Trump starts off with, why would we not? If he gets to the point that he can't, he makes a business decision and he steps back. But he never looks at something as being really, really a good idea in the long run if you can do it. And he never starts with, that's too hard. That's in the too hard to do column. He always starts off with the why would we not? And that's where we are with Greenland right now. Why would we not? So, make it a state? Probably not. And I say that not because we don't want to, but I mean because the people of Denmark may not really do, but I think what we can achieve is we start off talking about a state and we're willing to step back and forge a actual alliance. And it'll benefit Denmark and Greenland too. Guess what? We'll pay a lot of money to have the alliance. We'll pay rent for any facilities that we build. Next thing you know, we've got submarine basing, and we've got a naval port. And next thing you know, we've got a permanent basing there that almost doubles the population base. I can see it coming. And then on top of that, you've got their natural resources. Well, who can get to them? The Danes don't have the capacity to get to them. Are we going to let China go exploit them? No. How about this? How about we will agree to mine them using American technology and American know-how and American resources, and we'll do a profit sharing with you. How's that sound? And just like we're looking at right now with Zelensky in Ukraine, it'll be a thing. Greenland. I probably should have named this dipper Greenland, why would we not? I think we look at this as a why would we not moment. And we're foolish if we don't. At the very least, we should pursue a massive trade and defense alliance that brings it into the fold and makes it almost like a NATO country that is ours to defend because it also defends us. And if not that, then I don't know, maybe we buy it. Why would we not?
Why would we not?
Why would we not, JP? I mean, I like it. Danes, they can't quite handle it, but they'll come around.
I didn't even know this existed, but apparently there was a skit that Conan O'Brien did a couple years ago of him going over to Greenland trying to buy it from them, and he went over with a briefcase of $100,000. I didn't even know that skit even existed out there. So it looks like Conan beat Trump to the. He was handing them hats that said of the MAGA hat said "Make America Greenland" or "Make Greenland America" or something like that. It's like so it looks like Conan O'Brien. This is his brainchild. Trump can't even take credit for this one.
Well, Trump had it in 2019. How long ago was Conan O'Brien?
That's true. I don't know. I didn't see when it was, but
he had it back during Trump 1.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we're in Trump 2.
Yes.
But the idea is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Trump 1, they laughed. Trump 2, they ain't laughing. Because in between Trump 1 and Trump 2, China declared themselves to be a near Arctic nation and began encroaching more and more. And they labeled this as part of their multi-billion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative to create infrastructure for themselves around the world. Listen, Greenland, why would we not? All right, take me to a break, JP. We'll take this break. We'll come right back. And we're going to jump into dipper number 3 for the day, Culture Wars. This one's going to crack you up. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. Greenland, why will we not? I got a phone call about it right now. Let's see what he's got. Mike from Harvest. Hey, this is Phil. How are you? Did we lose him? Mike? Mike from Harvest.
If you're out there, Mike, try to call back.
All right, we lost Mike from Harvest. All right. I tell you what, though, I do have this. I have the vice president. This is Vice President J.D. Vance. I forgot to play this earlier. Let's play it again now. Vice President J.D. Vance, Audio 1, JP. Go ahead and play it.
There has been an expansion of the security footprint and the security interest of Russia and China. They're doing what they believe is in their interest. The United States must do what I know is in our interest, which is to make sure that Greenland is safe. If Greenland doesn't have self-determination, if the people of Greenland have their future controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, it's not going to make their lives better off, and most importantly, it's going to make American and world national security, world security, much, much weaker. We in some ways need to wake up. We need to wake up from a failed 40-year consensus that said that we could ignore the encroachment of powerful countries as they expand their ambitions. We can't just bury our head in the sand, or in Greenland, bury our head in the snow and pretend that the Chinese are not interested in this very large landmass. We know that they are. They've taken steps to put Greenland in ridiculous debt traps to invest and exploit the resources here. Yeah. And we know that they're sending a lot of military resources here. Yes, over the medium term, the United States will meet that challenge. We will put our own resources here. We already have a lot of great resources here, but we know we're going to have to do more to counter some of the nations that we know that we're competitive with.
That's a great quote, and it probably leads right into the call we're about to have. Mike from Harvest got back on, so let me just grab that phone call real quick. We got about a minute and a half. Hey, Mike, Phil Williams, how are you?
I'm doing well, Senator Williams. How about yourself, sir?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Well, you had commented that China is near Arctic adjacent, or so they believe.
Yeah.
They probably are, since they own a good chunk of Canada. Anyway, so
that's
which
fair.
Is adjacent to the Arctic, so you know.
Okay, so by default, they went to communist Canada, and they became a near Arctic nation. Is what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Something like that. Well, that's jokingly, but you may want to look into how much influence they have in Canada. So.
Absolutely. Well, I can see some of their governmental actions. That makes you wonder. Hey, Mike, appreciate the call, man. Thanks so much.
No problem, sir. You have a wonderful day, Senator Williams.
You too. Take care. That's good. We had one question as we're about to hit the break here. Bob from Madison says, does Greenland speak English? You looked it up for me ahead of time. What'd you call it?
So the official language is Greenlandic.
Greenlandic.
But I think what I'm seeing here is maybe it's a mix between Danish, Faroese, and Icelandic.
Wow.
So what is the Faroe Islands? Yeah, is that near Greenland, I assume?
You know, you're getting outside of my geographic ken right now. I mean, but I think those are some of the indigenous tribes spoke that language, and then of course they're Danish, and then of course Iceland is in the region, so you got Icelandic.
Yeah, so the Faroe Islands are between Iceland and Norway.
Wow. Okay. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Greenlandic. They got their own thing going on. All right, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Coming up next, the Culture Wars. Y'all stay tuned. It's a hoot. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew. Goes from Huntsville all the way back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa all the way back over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that loveliest little town on the plains called Auburn. Final Four. And oh, by the way, stretching across the border to what we now call again Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. I saw your face when I said Final Four. I saw your face. I saw your face. I saw it.
Let's see if they beat Florida. That's all I'll say.
Well, let's see if they'll beat Florida. You know?
I think not.
They're in the Final Four.
They are. But so have we've been to the Final Four too. So we're still on even ground here.
Oh, I'm sorry. This year?
No.
Okay. All right. Listen. I am not going to live in the past. I'm living in the present. All right. So anyway, we got an uphill climb, but War Eagle. It's just nice to be able to say that with like the kind of winning confidence and not like the kind of thing like after the big loss, you're going, yeah, you know what, the War Eagle. I'm so sick of being
the War Eagle anyway crowd.
The War Eagle anyway crowd. That's right.
You never hear me say Roll Tide anyway. That's such a lame thing to say.
We don't say War Eagle anyway, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You just sit over there and push the buttons. All right. Hey, listen, I'm doing this section right now called the Culture Wars. This is my third dipper for the day. Going to take it all the way to go home time here on Meatloaf Monday. The Culture Wars. What am I talking about? Well, first of all, the left is not gone. I know you know that, but I say it because we're winning right now. So much winning. How much winning can there be? Oh, my goodness, at the winning. The left is a dumpster fire. I mean, just look at their Tesla takedown so-called demonstrations. I mean, it was comical. They are buffoonery. It's like when you go to the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus and the clown car comes out and you get to watch all the antics and they wear the funny makeup and they do the silly things and they make people laugh. And yet that could be a Tesla takedown. It's just obnoxious how clownish they really are. They beclown themselves on a regular basis. But do not count them as gone. We cannot let our guard down. The culture wars are still real. I had a piece that came out this morning. You know, I write an op-ed that comes out every week in a variety of publications. Athens Now, thank you very much. Alex Mathens publishes it. Trustful Tribune publishes it. 1819 News usually gets it first. I send it to them over the weekend. Comes out every Monday, and then it goes to like a dozen to 20 other news outlets around the region. But anyway, my latest one came out today, and it basically calls for an end to the cries of racism. And I point out that I'm a white guy, and I'm allowed to talk about this. I am. I'm a white guy. I said in the article, I am like Whitey McWhitebread. I am white as a cave cricket. If I was any more white, I'd be clear. But that being said, I'm still allowed to have an opinion about matters of racism. Now, the left won't want you to do that. The left will tell you, if you've not walked in my shoes, you can't have an opinion. Well, I got news. Yes, I can. I'm not a woman, but I can have an opinion about abortion. I'm not in the Secretary of State's office, but I can have an opinion about foreign policy because I'm an American. I mean, listen, you're allowed to have an opinion about matters of racism. And my thought is, this is not a systemically racist nation. It's not. Racism is not who we are as a people. Does racism exist? Certainly it does. Why? Because it's still a fallen world, and until Jesus comes back, it's not going to be perfect. I am not trying to minimize it. I'm saying, yes, it still exists. Are we systemically racist? No, we are not. But there are even elected, not just charlatans and race baiters, there are elected officials who will tell you that racism is okay as long as it suits their needs. And that's so obnoxious. That is so bad. That is so awful. One of the worst right now is Jasmine Crockett. I'm going to call up that audio here pretty quick, JP, So I got an audio clip we're going to play here in a minute. I called it, it's audio number 2, but listen, the lovely Charlene pointed this one out to me. Jasmine Crockett, who I understand that people of every different stripe and standing and capability will get elected to office. They will. I've seen it. Every once in a while I saw people and I thought, how'd you get elected? Or, why are you still elected? Or, how'd you get reelected? You know, I watch some and I think, wow, there must be more to you than I can tell because you don't show up very well in debate. But, you know, never judge a book by its cover. There are people who may surprise you and they do great things. Jasmine Crockett, not so much. Jasmine Crockett has become an embarrassment. I mean, I think right now the left is wishing she would please stop. Just somebody make her stop. She can't stop. She can't stop herself. She has bought in on the idea that race baiting is a part of what her shtick is supposed to be. Even when she doesn't know that she's on the mic, so to speak. So here's an audio clip we're going to play for you. And the background of this is apparently Steve Harvey, the comedian who cracks me up. Steve Harvey has his own morning radio show. I did not know this. I want to find out more. But Steve Harvey did a prank call to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, claiming to be a black-owned business owner and wanting to know what she was going to do to help black folks get more contracts. You would think that a member of Congress would say, well, sir, it doesn't really work like that. You can't have contracts based on skin color. That's not what she did. Play it.
Listen, I want all my black businesses to survive and thrive. And so if there's anything that we can
So
do,
what are you doing? What are you doing, Jasmine? What are you doing for black business? What are you doing?
Listen, I do a ton. If you are familiar with the leadership under Pete Buttigieg with the Department of Transportation, the things that we did was we tried to insulate black businesses from an incoming crazy regime like the one that we've had to make sure that they could still get those contracts to be able to go out and work on these big infrastructure projects and things like that. And I honestly have a great relationship with the black businesses in my community. I'm surprised that I've never met you. I work with the Black Chamber of Business, and we always do events together. And I would love to bring you and your organization into the fold. But this, I gotta go. But you can call my office, and my staff can help you.
So you ain't got time for black people. You ain't got time to talk to me.
No,
now you got to go. You got to run.
I always have time. But this is getting a little bit more hostile than I typically like to deal with. Because if you've seen me, I know how to pop off, and I don't want to pop off.
You don't want to keep talking to me because I might pop off. Now, I will admit, I've had people call me when I was in office and want to bow up and tell me how it's going to be and what am I going to do? Why aren't you doing more? And most of the time they didn't know what they were talking about. But in this particular case, she didn't say, sir, we don't do racially based profiling in contract awards. She didn't do that. She went straight to, oh yeah, we do all we can to insulate black-owned businesses. And this is not an anti-black business discussion on my point. What I'm saying is we will maintain the idea that, or the left will maintain an idea that racism is systemic in America as long as it continues to promote systemically racist things. Did you hear that? That was the culture war right now is not anybody on the right saying we're gonna keep black businesses suppressed. No, it was her on the other side saying we're going to give skin color a preferential treatment and then somehow claim that what we're doing is not promoting racism. I mean, listen, racism will continue to be an argument as long as they make it the argument. There will always be evil people. There will always be bad things happen. But we are not a systemically racist nation. And yet there's a member of Congress right there who is literally on the phone with what she believes is a constituent, telling him she promotes the idea of using skin color as the determiner for who gets contracts. And that's just asinine. Asinine. Culture wars. Culture wars are real, y'all. They are. By the way, Jasmine Crockett is from Texas. I'm really not sure how somebody like her got elected in Texas. I'm pretty sure she's from Austin, but I don't know that for a fact.
Houston.
She's from Houston?
Let me double check, but I'm pretty sure she's from Houston. But then also you got Al Green from Texas. So
Oh, that's right. There are enclaves of what I would call Big Blue in Texas, I guess. And we have them here in Alabama too, though. Yeah. Where's she from? Houston?
Dallas.
Dallas.
Represents portions of Dallas and Tarrant counties with the cities of Dallas, Grand Prairie, DeSoto, Cedar Hill. So Dallas is the big city she represents. Yeah.
Wow. All right. How about this? Let's take it to the other one that's like they can't let go of, because I think right now the left has no plan. If you heard my monologue earlier in the show, I talked about the roadmap and why it's so important to understand how to read a map and then translate that into a plan for leadership is like having a roadmap. It tells you where to go. And right now, the Democrats have no plan. They are mapless. They don't know where. All they have is they have three things. They have abortion, they have racism, and they have transgenderism. Those are their three big platforms. And they're really not platforms, they're culture war issues. Story here on 1819 News. In Auburn, Alabama. All right, all my Auburn audience, dial in with me. Are you ready? 1819 News reports as of today, parents are concerned as Auburn High School administrators encourage students to wear ribbons for Transgender Day of Visibility. This was an official notification. It wasn't like somebody just did something. No. They have a system they use for sending out messaging, to all the parents and everything else. It's called Schoolology. The Schoolology app for Auburn High School. Everybody got a notification posted for Auburn High School students telling them to pick up their ribbons supporting Monday's Transgender Day of Visibility this past Friday. Parents were not happy. Parents want to know how this happened. Attempts to contact school officials, said the folks at 1819, about the origin of the post were unsuccessful. However, one parent spoke to 1819 News, stated that only school administrators can post on Schoolology. In other words, no one hacked it and got in there and did something. It had to be someone in the administration at the school who did it. Parents also say they could not recall the Schoolology app ever being used to promote other student organizations or causes, saying that some parents have been responsible for significant transgender activism within the school. They're not letting this go. They're not. And so we have to remain vigilant. The culture wars, they don't just stop because Trump won. We have to stay on our toes and recognize that the fight is ongoing. The culture war doesn't end. They are determined right now to make ground as best they can on anything and everything to do with abortion, with transgenderism, and certainly with what we talked about earlier on with racism. Last one for the break, because I'm running long, but the other one, abortion that I was talking about, Daily Caller has a piece, came out 2 days ago. You may not be aware. There's a showdown right now at the Supreme Court of the United States. Wednesday of this week, we're going to find out. The Supreme Court is set to consider on Wednesday of this week whether or not states can restrict Planned Parenthood from receiving Medicaid dollars. Remember, Medicaid funds, there are dollars that come from the federal government, but they're also matched at the state level. And so Medicaid is administered through the states. States that are anti-abortion, like Alabama, have determined not to support Planned Parenthood through Medicaid funding because Planned Parenthood is one of the biggest progenitors of abortion in the nation. Well, you've got right now a New York Times investigation into Planned Parenthood in February exposed all the quality of care issues they have. It's of botched abortions. One former staff member called it a conveyor belt of treating patients. And then you had the Roe v. Wade overturned that changed everything in the lay of the land, and states have been given a say. The Supreme Court of the United States, the libs are fighting this like crazy right now. Why? Because it's one of their three planks. Abortion. It's all they have. Now, Tim Walz feels like they didn't go woke enough in the last election. Why is anybody still listening to him? Do we know? Is he still considered a force? I don't think so. Tim Walz.
I guess he always have an audience, but he's one of those though that I think helps us the more he talks too. I put him in that category. So
he and Jasmine Crockett.
Yeah. Well, he's not as bad as Jasmine, but he's he says a lot of stupid stuff. I feel like every time I see him out doing something. So we'll see. I mean, he's also proud that a stock is going down. That
in Tesla,
a big chunk of his state 401k holdings is Tesla. So.
What a knucklehead. All right, listen, the culture wars are real. That's my point. The culture wars are real. I gave you one of those stories right here in Alabama. I gave you one of those stories about a member of Congress. And I gave you one of those stories about the Supreme Court of the United States. So what I'm saying is the culture wars are real. They are everywhere. You have to stay vigilant and alert. Yes, we won. Yes, we're still winning. We're winning on a daily basis right now, but the culture wars are still real. And abortion, racism, and transgenderism are the 3 platform planks they've got right now, and they're fighting them as best they can. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, taking a break. We'll come right back, jump into a few text messages, and clean up for the day and get you to go home time on a Meatloaf Monday. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. About to go to the phones, but I got to tell you, I got so many text messages, I can't possibly get them all, and I appreciate you guys checking in. Shag Nasty the Atheist gave us a comment about congratulations, you won the culture war. A country with a median 8th grade education level congratulates you. Then he gave himself a thumb up, and they took away his thumbs up. I don't know what's happening.
I think he accidentally liked his text.
Oh, he actually liked his own text.
Yeah.
Shag Nasty. Okay. John from Huntsville says, Chuck Gray gets an A+ for his fantastic performance. Phil gets an A+ for his perfect performance, which means today's winner, hang on, mine was perfect. How can I not be the winner? Was JP with a beyond perfect A++. You're beyond perfect, dude.
Yeah, but the reason why is fake news.
Oh, you gave him 60 extra credit points for saying Roll Tide is lame.
No, I said saying Roll Tide anyway after a loss is lame.
Okay, John and I heard something.
This guy's fake news.
Jeff from Indiana's on the phone. Jeff, how you doing, budy?
Doing pretty good, Phil. It's my 4-day weekend, actually.
I know. What's going on? You're just you're just sitting around, just living the life.
I know. Apparently orders are down, but I don't know how with all the tariffs he just put on. So who knows?
Yeah, well, watch how that affects things. It's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think about Greenland? You want the state of Greenland to be our thing?
Yeah, Greenland. Yeah, I can't imagine. Everybody most people on the face of this planet want to come to America. One way or another, just to get here. I can't imagine the people from Greenland would not want to sit there and say, hey, yeah, we'll be a territory, state, or whatever you want us to be and everything, because the United States spends enormous amounts of money on people and things and stuff, and they would be much better off. I'm sure they would Greenland would pretty much flourish if we was a state or a territory.
Now, you know what? I wonder if we can go snow skiing there and just trade off some time for a timeshare in Florida. I'm sure they'd like some time away from the cold weather.
I think you're probably right. But, but if I was a little independent country and stuff, I would declare war on the United States, because the best thing you can do is, have a war with the United States and get whooped. Look what it did for Japan and Germany and all these other places that we put all this millions and billions of money into and everything, and look how they're doing now.
You know what? you may be onto something. So next thing you know, Costa Rica's going to war with the United States. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's what I'd do. I mean, let him come in and take us over.
All right, brother. The music's playing. I'm sorry you didn't get in till later, but we got to head out. We will talk to you soon, all right?
Have a good one, Phil.
See you, buddy. All right, that's it. Meatloaf Monday is concluded. Hey, don't forget, there are more of us than there are of them. God is still very much on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.